Top 10 Toughest Actors in Hollywood History. Hollywood has always been fascinated with toughness. On screen, we see fearless men standing their ground, surviving impossible odds, and facing danger without hesitation. But what if some of the most convincing tough guys in film history weren't acting at all? What if the grit, confidence, and quiet intensity we see on screen came from lives that were just as dangerous, demanding, and unforgiving as the stories they portrayed? In the golden age of Hollywood, studios carefully crafted images. Publicists shaped reputations, polished personas, and sold audiences the illusion of strength. Yet behind the bright lights and classic marquees, there existed a rare group of actors whose toughness could not be manufactured. These were men shaped by war, poverty, violence, hard labor, and survival long before the cameras ever started rolling. They didn't learn resilience from scripts. They learned it in battlefields, boxing rings, prisons, coal mines, and unforgiving streets. When these men walked onto a film set, they brought something modern cinema often struggles to recreate: authenticity. Their movements weren't choreographed guesses at violence. Their silences weren't theatrical pauses. Everything felt real because it was real. Some of them carried military medals earned under live fire. Others survived childhoods marked by hunger and instability. A few faced down physical danger so often that fear simply became another obstacle to step over. Directors noticed it. Co-stars felt it. Audiences sensed it, even if they couldn't explain why. This is not a list of actors who merely look tough. This is a journey into the lives of men whose strength was forged long before fame found them. Men whose personal histories were so intense that studios sometimes feared the truth would be unbelievable to audiences. Men whose calm presence on screen came from having already faced the worst life could offer. In this documentary style deep dive into vintage Hollywood, we explore 10 actors whose real lives gave weight to every role they played. Their stories remind us that true toughness isn't loud, flashy, or exaggerated. It is quiet confidence, discipline under pressure, and the ability to endure when no one is watching. These are the men who didn't pretend to be tough. They lived it. And as we begin this journey through Hollywood history, one question lingers. When the cameras stopped rolling, who among them was truly the toughest of all? Number 1. Audie Murphy. The actor who lived the toughest story of them all. Murphy was never meant to become a Hollywood star. His life began far from cameras, red carpets, and studio lights. He was born during the Great Depression in rural Texas, into a world defined by poverty, instability, and responsibility far too heavy for a child. From an early age, survival was not an abstract idea. It was daily reality. School quickly became secondary to work. Hunting was not a pastime for Audie Murphy. It was how food reached the table. By his early teenage years, he had already learned discipline, patience, and self-control, not from mentors or institutions, but from necessity. Those early lessons would shape the quiet strength that followed him for the rest of his life. When World War II broke out, Murphy was still underage. Determined to serve, he falsified his age and enlisted in the United States Army. What followed would become one of the most extraordinary combat records in American history. He fought in multiple major European campaigns, repeatedly placing himself in direct danger, often outnumbered, often wounded, and yet returning to the front again and again. By the end of the war, Audie Murphy had become the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II. His honors were not the result of bravado or reckless ambition, but of sustained courage under relentless pressure. His actions were so extraordinary that, when later adapted for film, some of the real events had to be toned down because producers feared audiences would not believe them. Hollywood discovered Murphy not because he chased fame, but because his story demanded attention. When he transitioned into acting, directors quickly realized something rare. Murphy did not need to perform toughness. He carried it naturally. His presence was calm, restrained, and deeply authentic. There was no exaggeration, no theatrical violence. Everything felt measured, controlled, and real. On screen, Audie Murphy portrayed heroes without glamour. Off-screen, he lived with the weight of his experiences. Long before post-traumatic stress was widely understood, Murphy spoke openly about sleepless nights, recurring memories, and the invisible wounds left behind by combat. His willingness to acknowledge those struggles was itself an act of courage. Audie Murphy never defined himself by strength alone. He valued humility, discipline, and responsibility. His toughness was not loud. It did not seek attention. It existed quietly, forged in hardship, tested in war, and carried through life with dignity. Among all the men Hollywood ever called tough, Audie Murphy stands apart. Not because he played the hardest characters, but because he lived the hardest reality. Number 2. Charles Bronson. The actor whose toughness was forged long before Hollywood noticed, before Charles Bronson became one of the most intimidating faces in cinema history, his life was already defined by hardship. Born into a poor immigrant family in Pennsylvania, Bronson grew up surrounded by struggle, labor, and loss. He was one of 15 children in a household where survival came before comfort, and where strength was not optional. By the age of 10, Bronson was already working in coal mines to help support his family. He spent his formative years deep underground, breathing dust, enduring darkness, and learning what exhaustion truly felt like. Those early years left permanent marks on his body and his face. The weathered features audiences later recognized were not crafted by makeup or lighting. They were earned. Violence was not unfamiliar to him. The neighborhoods he grew up in demanded toughness, not posturing. Weakness invited danger. Bronson learned early that survival depended on awareness, restraint, and the ability to defend yourself when necessary. This reality shaped the quiet intensity that followed him throughout his life. World War II further tested him. Bronson served as an aerial gunner in the United States Army Air Forces, flying combat missions over Japan. He faced anti-aircraft fire, chaos in the skies, and the constant awareness that each mission could be his last. He was wounded in combat and awarded the Purple Heart, returning home with a calm demeanor that only men who had truly faced death tend to carry. After the war, Bronson did not step into stardom. He worked dozens of jobs, including laborer, cook, and professional boxer, before slowly finding his way into acting. Hollywood did not see him as a leading man at first. His appearance was considered too rough, too severe. Instead, he was cast as criminals, fighters, and outlaws, roles that felt natural because he understood those worlds. What separated Bronson from other tough guy actors was authenticity. When he threw a punch on screen, it did not look choreographed. It looked efficient, controlled, final. Directors and co-stars often commented that his movements carried the economy of someone who had been in real confrontations, not staged ones. Despite his reputation, Bronson was not loud or aggressive off-screen. He carried himself with quiet confidence. When threatened by criminal organizations later in his career, he refused protection, reportedly stating that he had lived through worse than intimidation. Charles Bronson did not perform toughness for attention. He embodied it naturally. His strength came from years of labor, war, and survival, not from image or publicity. Hollywood eventually recognized what audiences already felt. This was not an actor pretending to be dangerous. This was a man who understood exactly what danger meant, and that understanding made every role unforgettable. Number 3. Lee Marvin. The actor who carried the weight of real war onto the screen. Lee Marvin did not learn violence from scripts or rehearsals. He learned it in combat. Before becoming one of Hollywood's most intimidating and respected tough guy actors, Marvin served as a United States Marine during World War II. His military service was not ceremonial, and it was not safe. He fought in the Pacific Theater, one of the most brutal and unforgiving environments of the war, where combat was close, chaotic, and relentless. During the Battle of Saipan in 1944, Marvin was severely wounded by machine gun fire. The injury was so serious that it ended his military career and left him with permanent physical damage. He spent over a year recovering in military hospitals and walked with a limp for the rest of his life, a detail he carefully concealed in his film performances. That limp was not acting. It was a reminder. Marvin rarely spoke about his time in combat, and when he did, he rejected romantic language. He was direct, honest, and unsentimental. He once stated plainly that anyone who claimed to enjoy war either did not understand it or was lying. That perspective would later define the authenticity of his performances. When Lee Marvin arrived in Hollywood, he carried himself differently from other actors. There was a seriousness behind his eyes, a stillness that suggested experience rather than imagination. Directors noticed immediately. When Marvin played violent men, he did not exaggerate. His movements were restrained. His expressions were minimal. His presence alone communicated danger. This realism made him uniquely effective in roles that required intimidation without theatrics. In films like The Killers and The Dirty Dozen, Marvin did not need loud dialogue or dramatic gestures. His authority came from silence, posture, and the suggestion that he understood consequences in a way others did not. Off-screen, Marvin's reputation matched his on-screen persona. Fellow actors often remarked that the atmosphere shifted when he entered a room. Not because he sought dominance, but because people sensed authenticity. He had been tested in ways most men never would be. One infamous incident during a film shoot involved a bar fight where Marvin reportedly held his own against multiple men significantly younger than him. The following day, he arrived on set as scheduled, bruised but unconcerned, refusing special treatment or delays. To Marvin, endurance was expected, not praised. Despite his toughness, Marvin was not reckless. He was thoughtful, well-read, and deeply reflective. Those who knew him personally often remarked on the contrast between his quiet intelligence and his fearsome reputation. He understood violence not as spectacle, but as something serious, costly, and final. That understanding is what made Lee Marvin different. He did not perform toughness. He did not sell danger. He embodied it. When Lee Marvin threatened someone on screen, audiences believed him because they sensed the truth behind it. This was a man who had faced death, survived it, and carried that experience into every role with honesty and restraint. In Hollywood, many men played tough guys. Lee Marvin was one of the few who truly was one. Number 4. Steve McQueen. The actor who lived on the edge because fear never slowed him down. Steve McQueen was not simply Hollywood's king of cool. He was a man who chased danger long after success gave him every reason to stop. His toughness was not a pose for the camera. It was a lifestyle rooted in rebellion, risk, and an almost reckless need to test limits. McQueen single quotes, "As early life was unstable and harsh." He grew up moving between broken homes, discipline centers, and periods of abandonment that forced him to mature quickly. Rules were something he challenged instinctively, not out of arrogance, but out of survival. That defiance followed him into adulthood and shaped the restless energy audiences later felt on screen. Before Hollywood embraced him, McQueen joined the United States Marine Corps. Military life did not tame him easily. He clashed with authority, faced discipline, and tested boundaries repeatedly. Yet when it mattered most, he demonstrated courage and responsibility. During a training exercise in extreme conditions, McQueen helped save fellow Marines when equipment failed and lives were at risk. It was an early glimpse of a pattern that would define him. He resisted control, but he did not abandon others. After leaving the Marines, McQueen drifted through physically demanding jobs before acting finally took hold. Unlike many actors who left danger behind once fame arrived, McQueen leaned into it. Racing motorcycles and cars was not a hobby for him. It was obsession. He competed against professional racers, often under false names so studios could not stop him. On film sets, McQueen insisted on performing his own stunts whenever possible. During the filming of The Great Escape, nearly every motorcycle sequence involved him directly. Only one iconic jump was denied to him, not because he lacked skill, but because insurance companies refused to take the risk. Even then, McQueen was involved in every other dangerous moment. His pursuit of authenticity placed him in genuine danger repeatedly. He raced in world-class endurance competitions, including prestigious international events, and earned respect not as a celebrity, but as a capable competitor. Fellow racers later admitted that McQueen's skill and fearlessness matched that of professionals who had spent their entire lives on the track. This appetite for risk extended beyond racing. On multiple film productions, McQueen placed himself in situations that alarmed directors and crew. Fire, water, speed, and height did not intimidate him. Attempts to restrain him often failed. He believed that danger translated into truth on screen, and he was willing to pay the price. Off-screen, McQueen carried himself with quiet intensity. He did not seek attention through words. His presence alone commanded it. Those who worked closely with him described a man who understood consequences, accepted them, and moved forward without hesitation. Steve McQueen's toughness was not about aggression. It was about fearlessness. He was drawn to the edge, not because he wanted to impress others, but because the edge was where he felt alive. In Hollywood, many actors played men who defied danger. Steve McQueen was one of the few who actually ran toward it. Number 5. Kirk Douglas. The actor whose toughness came from willpower that refused to break. Kirk Douglas did not grow up with safety nets, comfort, or second chances. His toughness was not inherited from privilege or cultivated by image. It was built through poverty, hunger, and an unrelenting determination to rise above circumstances that could have easily crushed him. Born to immigrant parents, Douglas grew up in extreme poverty. His childhood was marked by financial struggle so severe that food insecurity was a constant reality. From a young age, he worked whatever jobs he could find, developing a fierce independence and an understanding that nothing would be handed to him. Strength for Douglas began as endurance, but his toughness was not only economic. It was physical. Before acting ever became a possibility, Douglas was a competitive wrestler. This was not entertainment wrestling. It was disciplined, demanding, and punishing. Wrestling taught him balance, leverage, pain tolerance, and mental control. He learned how to dominate physically without wasting energy, a skill that later translated seamlessly to the screen. World War II further tested him. Douglas served in the United States Navy as a communications officer aboard a submarine chaser. Life at sea during wartime was tense, exhausting, and dangerous. Constant vigilance was required, and mistakes carried fatal consequences. The experience hardened him, not by making him aggressive, but by sharpening his resolve. When Douglas arrived in Hollywood, he stood out immediately. His intensity was unmistakable. Directors noted that he attacked roles rather than simply performing them. Every movement carried purpose. Every stare felt confrontational. He did not play passive men. Even in silence, his characters pushed back. This approach often made him difficult to work with, but never forgettable. Douglas demanded realism. He trained obsessively for physically demanding roles, refusing shortcuts. During the filming of Spartacus, he insisted on performing dangerous scenes that others would have delegated to stunt doubles. Injuries were treated as obstacles, not stopping points. His toughness extended far beyond film sets. Later in life, Douglas survived a devastating helicopter crash that killed others and left him severely injured. Recovery was long, painful, and uncertain. Yet he fought his way back, relearning basic movement through discipline and perseverance. Then came another test. A major stroke impaired his speech, threatening the career and identity he had built over decades. Once again, Douglas refused to surrender. Through years of therapy and effort, he regained the ability to speak publicly, turning what could have been a silent ending into a statement of resilience. Kirk Douglas was not the loudest tough guy in Hollywood. He did not rely on intimidation alone. His power came from relentless determination, mental endurance, and refusal to accept defeat. Many actors look tough on screen. Kirk Douglas proved toughness was a decision made every day, long after the cameras stopped rolling. Number 6. James Cagney. The actor who proved toughness was not about size, but precision. James Cagney never looked like a traditional Hollywood tough guy. He wasn't tall. He wasn't physically imposing by modern action star standards. Yet pound for pound, few actors in film history carried more genuine toughness than Cagney. His strength was not theatrical. It was efficient, controlled, and learned the hard way. Cagney grew up in the rough neighborhoods of New York City's Lower East Side, where survival depended on awareness and speed. Violence was not something you watched from a distance. It was something you learned to avoid, manage, or end quickly. Being smaller than most men around him forced Cagney to become sharper, faster, and more disciplined. Boxing became a necessity, not a hobby. He trained seriously and developed real fighting ability, learning footwork, timing, and how to strike without wasting motion. Those skills stayed with him for life. When audiences later watched Cagney's fight scenes, they weren't seeing choreography. They were seeing a man who understood exactly how real confrontations worked. What set Cagney apart was efficiency. His movements were quick and decisive. His punches didn't wind up. They landed. Directors noticed immediately that his fight scenes felt different. They were abrupt, sudden, and believable. Real violence is rarely graceful, and Cagney understood that instinctively. His background as a dancer added another layer to his toughness. Dance gave him balance, coordination, and explosive control over his body. This combination of rhythm and aggression made him uniquely dangerous on screen. He could shift from charm to threat in a fraction of a second, a trait that made his gangster roles unforgettable. On set, Cagney insisted on realism. He didn't always warn co-stars when a scene required physical contact, believing genuine reactions created honesty on camera. While this approach occasionally caused tension, it also produced performances that felt raw and immediate. People reacted to him because they had to. Off-screen, Cagney carried a reputation as someone you did not provoke. Not because he sought conflict, but because he was fully capable of ending it. Fellow actors often remarked that his calm demeanor masked real ability. He didn't posture. He didn't threaten. He simply existed with confidence earned through experience. Despite his tough reputation, Cagney was disciplined and professional. He valued control over chaos. His toughness was never reckless. It was measured, focused, purposeful. He understood when to act, and when restraint was the stronger choice. James Cagney redefined what a tough actor could be. He proved that danger does not come from size alone, but from skill, speed, and certainty. When he moved on screen, audiences believed him, not because he looked intimidating, but because he knew exactly what he was doing. In a world full of exaggerated tough guys, James Cagney stood out by making it look real. Number 7. John Wayne, the actor whose toughness was built on endurance, not image. John Wayne did not become tough because Hollywood needed a hero. His toughness existed long before cameras followed him. It was shaped by physical labor, athletic discipline, pain tolerance, and an unshakable sense of perseverance that defined the way he lived and worked. Before he was known as the Duke, John Wayne grew up in environments where strength was expected, not celebrated. He was tall, powerfully built, and physically capable from a young age. His early years were marked by hard work and responsibility, experiences that taught him how to endure long days, physical strain, and discomfort without complaint. Wayne's athletic ability earned him a football scholarship to the University of Southern California. Football in that era was brutal, demanding toughness without modern safety standards. Although an injury ended his athletic career, it introduced him to the discipline and physical sacrifice that would later shape his work ethic in film. His early Hollywood years were far from glamorous. Wayne worked behind the scenes as a prop man and stunt performer, moving heavy equipment and assisting on physically demanding shoots. He learned filmmaking from the ground up, often performing dangerous tasks that others avoided. This period hardened him, not only physically, but mentally. When Wayne finally rose to stardom, he refused to distance himself from physical effort. Unlike many leading actors of his stature, he continued performing his own stunts well into middle age. Falls from horses, intense fight scenes, and long shooting days under extreme conditions were part of his routine. Pain was not something he dramatized. It was something he worked through. One of the most telling examples of his endurance came during the filming of The Alamo, where Wayne cracked ribs during a stunt. Rather than halt production, he had the injury taped and continued directing and starring in the film. For him, stopping was never the first option. Wayne's toughness was further tested by serious health battles. He survived major surgeries and long recoveries, yet returned to physically demanding roles when many would have stepped away. Doctors were often surprised by his refusal to slow down. He viewed physical resilience as a responsibility, not a personal achievement. On set, Wayne was known for long hours, harsh environments, and an expectation that others keep up. Desert heat, exhausting schedules, and difficult terrain did not change his pace. Directors and crew often remarked that his stamina exceeded that of men half his age. Despite later controversies surrounding his views, even critics acknowledged his physical courage and endurance. Fellow actors who disagreed with him politically still respected his toughness. They had seen it firsthand, day after day. Under conditions that exposed weakness quickly, John Wayne's strength was not flashy. It was steady, reliable, grounded in consistency rather than aggression. He didn't need to prove himself through confrontation. His toughness showed through work ethic, resilience, and refusal to quit. Hollywood created many tough characters. John Wayne became one by enduring everything required to bring them to life. Number 8. Robert Mitchum. The actor whose toughness came from calm indifference to danger. Robert Mitchum never tried to look tough. He didn't raise his voice, flex his body, or perform aggression for attention. His toughness came from something far more unsettling, complete indifference to intimidation. Where other men reacted, Mitchum remained still. And that stillness made him dangerous. Mitchum's early life was unstable and unforgiving. His father died when he was still a child, leaving the family drifting from place to place. Discipline came inconsistently, and consequences were often learned the hard way. By his teenage years, Mitchum had already spent time riding freight trains, working hard labor jobs, and getting into trouble that forced him to grow up quickly. Violence and authority were realities he encountered early. As a young man, Mitchum was arrested for vagrancy and chain gang labor, experiences that stripped away any romantic view of danger or punishment. He learned that panic made things worse and that survival depended on keeping control when situations turned hostile. This calm followed him into adulthood and eventually into Hollywood. Unlike actors who trained to project menace, Mitchum simply existed on screen. His relaxed posture, slow speech, and detached gaze created a presence that audiences found both hypnotic and unsettling. Directors quickly realized that Mitchum did not need to act threatening. He only needed to stop caring what others thought. On film sets, Mitchum developed a reputation for being unflappable. Arguments, pressure, and chaos rarely moved him. While others grew tense, Mitchum leaned back, spoke softly, and waited. That patience often ended confrontations before they began. People sensed that escalating a situation with him would not end well. His personal life reinforced that reputation. Mitchum was known for walking away from bar fights without throwing the first punch, not out of fear, but because he understood how quickly violence could spiral. Yet when confronted directly, he did not hesitate. Stories circulated throughout Hollywood of men regretting the decision to test him. Despite his rebellious image, Mitchum was deeply professional. He arrived on set prepared, delivered performances efficiently, and avoided drama unless it served the work. His toughness was not chaos. It was discipline wrapped in nonchalance. One of Mitchum's defining traits was his refusal to be controlled. Studios struggled to market him because he did not fit neatly into heroic or villainous molds. He did not seek approval. That independence became part of his strength. He worked on his own terms, choosing roles that allowed him to remain authentic. His performances in film noir revealed this quality perfectly. Mitchum's characters often appeared relaxed even when facing imminent danger. That calm suggested experience, not ignorance. Audiences believed him because he behaved like someone who had already faced worse. Robert Mitchum's toughness was never loud. It was internal, built from hardship, mistakes, and lessons learned early. He didn't prove himself through force. He proved himself by remaining steady when others lost control. In Hollywood, where image often mattered more than reality, Robert Mitchum stood apart. He didn't look for trouble. He didn't fear it either. And that balance made him unforgettable. Number 9. Anthony Quinn. The actor whose toughness was forged through survival, not comfort. Anthony Quinn's strength did not come from Hollywood training, polished discipline, or carefully crafted image. It came from survival. His early life was shaped by instability, poverty, and constant movement, experiences that forced him to adapt quickly or fall behind. Born in Mexico and raised in the United States, Quinn grew up between cultures, often feeling like an outsider in both. His family struggled financially, and stability was rare. He worked from a young age, taking physically demanding jobs that required endurance rather than ambition. Life taught him early that strength meant adaptability. As a teenager, Quinn was deeply influenced by boxing. He trained seriously, not as a hobby, but as a way to defend himself and earn respect in environments where weakness was punished. Boxing taught him timing, resilience, and how to remain composed under pressure. Those lessons would later define his physical presence on screen. Quinn's life changed dramatically after a serious accident left him bedridden for months. During recovery, he turned to reading and art, developing an intellectual depth that balanced his physical toughness. This combination of body and mind became his signature. He was not just powerful, he was thoughtful. When Quinn entered Hollywood, he quickly realized he would not be cast as conventional leading man. Instead, he was often chosen for roles that required intensity, moral complexity, and physical authority. He embraced those roles fully, bringing authenticity to characters shaped by hardship, conflict, and inner struggle. Quinn's toughness was never one-dimensional. On screen, he could be fierce, commanding, and intimidating. Off-screen, he was disciplined and reflective. He trained his body consistently, understanding that physical readiness was part of professional responsibility. Directors trusted him with demanding roles because they knew he could endure long shoots, harsh environments, and physical strain without complaint. His performances often involved emotionally heavy material, and Quinn approached those roles with seriousness. He believed toughness was not just about physical strength, but about emotional endurance. Carrying the weight of complex characters required resilience of a different kind. Colleagues often described Quinn as grounded and unshakable. He did not posture or intimidate. His authority came from confidence earned through life experience. He had lived through hardship, failure, and recovery, and those experiences made him calm in situations that unsettled others. Anthony Quinn's legacy is defined by versatility and endurance. He portrayed warriors, outcasts, leaders, and survivors across decades, never relying on gimmicks or exaggerated force. His presence felt real because it was built from lived experience. In an industry that often celebrates image over substance, Anthony Quinn stood out as a man shaped by reality. His toughness was not loud. It was layered, and it endured. Number 10. Charlton Heston. The actor whose toughness came from discipline, conviction, and endurance. Charlton Heston's strength was not built on chaos or rebellion. It was built on discipline. Where many tough actors carried the marks of hardship through instability, Heston carried his toughness through structure, control, and unwavering conviction. His presence was commanding not because he sought dominance, but because he embodied authority naturally. Heston grew up in a stable environment compared to many of his peers, but stability did not make him soft. From an early age, he was drawn to physical conditioning, classical education, and self-improvement. He believed deeply in preparation. Strength, to Heston, was something earned through consistent effort rather than raw aggression. Before achieving stardom, Heston served in the United States Army Air Forces during World War II. Though he did not see frontline combat like some on this list, military service reinforced discipline, responsibility, and respect for structure. Those values stayed with him for life and shaped the way he approached every role. When Heston entered Hollywood, his physical presence immediately set him apart. Tall, broad-shouldered, and powerfully built, he looked like a man carved from stone. But what truly defined him was control. His movements were deliberate. His voice was steady. His posture projected certainty. Directors quickly realized that he did not need exaggerated emotion to convey strength. Heston became famous for roles that demanded extreme physical endurance. Films like Ben-Hur required punishing training regimens, long shooting days, and physically exhausting performances. The famous chariot race alone demanded months of preparation and absolute trust in his own abilities. Heston performed under conditions that pushed physical limits, yet he approached each challenge methodically rather than recklessly. Unlike actors who chased danger impulsively, Heston respected it. He trained relentlessly, rehearsed extensively, and minimized unnecessary risk. His toughness was not about flirting with disaster. It was about being ready when disaster arrived. That mindset allowed him to perform feats that looked impossible while maintaining control. Off-screen, Heston carried himself with seriousness and confidence. He believed in standing firm on principle, whether in professional decisions or personal beliefs. That steadfastness earned him respect even from those who disagreed with him. He was not easily swayed, intimidated, or pressured into compromise. Colleagues often described Heston as dependable under pressure. On demanding sets, he maintained focus when exhaustion set in. He expected professionalism from others because he demanded it from himself first. His endurance was mental as much as physical. Charlton Heston's toughness was not born from survival alone. It was forged through discipline, preparation, and conviction. He represented a different kind of strength, one rooted in responsibility and self-mastery. In Hollywood, where toughness often meant aggression, Charlton Heston proved that authority, endurance, and discipline could be just as powerful. And that quiet strength completed the list. These men didn't just play tough characters. They lived hard lives that shaped every role they brought to the screen. If you enjoyed this journey through classic Hollywood, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear which actors stood out to you.